just want to show you what I've been working on for the last few days with the help of a few students of mine. This here is the Maryville Wickham area of Newcastle, which a household travel survey has recently found has a bike modal share of about 5%. Now that's the same as Portland, America's #1 bicycling city. So we've actually got a lot of people who are bicycling out of this neighbourhood, largely to the city centre, where a lot of people work in, well, creative industries. And they're doing that because there's a bike track that follows the waterfront all the way around, which is a safe and convenient and fairly quick route into the city for all of these people. Now, just recently, we've managed to get a black spot here across this arterial road fixed up, and that will increase bicycle traffic flows immeasurably, really, around this area. And it raises the question as to whether industrial sites that flank this bike path and which are not very accessible to vehicular traffic, for those kinds of developments, they're also brownfield contaminated sites, so not suited to low density development, raises the question as to whether or not they shouldn't be high density residential developments and give more people the opportunity to use this bicycle infrastructure for transport. This site alone, I've done the numbers, and we could be looking at about 4,000 on these few sites just here, 4,000 people, not displacing industry entirely, leaving that at the ground level under a podium perhaps, but developer infrastructure contributions from a site like that with so many people could pay not just for traffic lights but an overpass at that point, and also for upgrades of the bike tracks. Now that general principle is one that I think is worth testing with a pilot project such as that. And if it works, well, do another one. Next project along those lines. Down here is the former Bullock Island train line, which used to link Carrington across to the main spur line over here. The tracks are actually still visible across this street. Developer infrastructure contributions from these sites that would be opened up to bicycle-oriented development could pay for an overpass that links up to the waterfront bike track there at the moment, and also pay for a bike path that runs along in the rail easement, whether the rail is kept or whether it stays, and there's always debate about that in this city. Either way, you could have a bike path that runs along that rail corridor, paid for by developer infrastructure contributions. Now, that's a principle which can be used all across the city, not in areas like this one, Woodville Junction, which has good access to a train station and would really suit conventional transit-oriented redevelopment, but for sites like these, a little bit further up, unnamed sites, again brownfield contaminated sites, light industrial functions at the moment, used to be a light factory there, but now it's just like a furniture warehouse. But higher grade industrial facilities could be built under a podium with high density housing above for thousands of people, and again infrastructure development, developer infrastructure contributions used to pay for extensions of the bike path and crosses, bridges to cross waterways, and also to build bike paths really wherever there's a rail line or a waterway, tendrils up into Mayfield, sections that link up all parts of the city in that way. Let's just say the idea still has worked quite well. Extend bike paths further still into the Lambton area, open up more low-grade industrial sites for light industrial, high-density, affordable housing developments, with infrastructure contributions paying for further expansions of the Greenway network. This is the sports stadium here. They need lots of parking, but there's no reason why we couldn't build a multi-storey car park with housing above it. Lots of housing, again, because it has proximity not to conventional infrastructure. I don't mean parking for the residents, I mean parking for the people who come to the stadium. The residents have got an even better way of getting around. That's the bike path network, which links them really to the whole city and everything you're looking at there is within about a half-hour cycling radius. So these are people who have got a great quality of life. They're not being stuck in gridlock. Gridlock is, for the rest of the people, is actually being relieved to some extent. But we're opening up with greenways really quite enormous sites. Over here a site of turntables which might be adaptively reused, or maybe we could plaster the whole site with something that looks like Barcelona. Again, next to no car parking, some light industrial, but all of these people's lives are oriented around bicycle transportation. Links back up here to the Fernley track, and pretty much every waterway. What I'm doing at the moment is I'm mapping out all of the waterways and all of the former rail lines and parklands that could be used to put together a complete network of greenways throughout the city, paid for by developer infrastructure contributions to do these, what I'm calling in a paper I'm writing at the moment, bicycling-oriented developments. This is an example of rail trails that lead into the city. This is a virtually buried or lost rail connection, the old Glenrock rail line, which came through Cook's Hill here. Again, it could be picked out and turned into a bicycle corridor. By the time it gets close to the town, it's running through Glover's Lane, would pass under Lehman Street as it used to, across Civic Park, and then an elevated bike route would get it across Hunter Street and over to a greenway that runs along the side of the rail corridor, or down the middle of the rail corridor if the train's gone. Australia's oldest ever rail line, the first ever rail line, the Australian Agricultural Line, had a high line that came across which could actually be turned into an elevated greenway, remade as an elevated greenway, hugged the hill here and then crossed Civic Park and ran down along the middle of King Street where there could be a greenway as well. In this case connecting to a potentially beautiful waterway which at the moment is just buried under roads, called Cottage Creek. All of those bridges could be lightened up and precedence given to the waterway actually, so that pedestrians and cyclists could use the waterway, and in this case that would link them back up into other parts of the town. So that's what I've been working on, and I plan to unveil it as a fully realised plan with a paper that I'm authoring at the moment to make the case for bicycling-oriented transport as something that would be much healthier for a city, more egalitarian, more sustainable, and profitable. What do they call that? A triple bottom line.